Mitch Perry, political reporter for Spectrum Bay News 9. I want to thank and welcome the viewers tuning into the Tampa Bay Chamber's 2020 Virtual Candidate Forum Series. The Chamber focuses on policy, not politics. And while they don't endorse, the Chamber wants to make sure its members in the business community are informed on where candidates stand on issues that are important to business. Today, we're excited to have the candidates for Pinellas County Property Appraiser with us. I'd like to welcome Trevor Mallory and Mike Twitty.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Great to have you guys here with us today. First question, let's start out with Mr. Twitty. Why should the people of Pinellas County select you as their property appraiser for the next 4 years?
Well, I think I've done a very solid job in the office to this point. We've a lot of process improvements in the office. I've been able to return $1.2 million to the taxing authorities out of my budget over the last 3 years. I've been active at not only the local but the state level. I have a constitutional amendment going to the ballot to help protect homeowners this year that relates to the Save Our Homes cap and portability. So Amendment 5, I'm proud to say I've worked hard on it for the last 3 years, is going to the ballot that you'll also be able to vote for in November. And that will add an additional year to portability. So those people that are losing their port, moving from one home to another because there was a misunderstanding of how that structure works in Florida tax law, and maybe we can get into that later in the questions. But that's just one of many reasons. We've rolled out lots of new tools to our citizens via our website. Our outreach to our citizens has vastly improved, and we've even turned around our homestead processing now to roughly 48 hours.
Great, thank you. The question to you, Trevor Mallory, is the challenger. Why should the people of Pinellas County select you as their next property appraiser?
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to the Tampa Bay Chambers for inviting me to this interview and having me here. Couple things here. You know, my biggest thing is outreach. Outreach to certain communities, I believe, needs to be ramped up a lot higher than it is now, because we all know, and I'm sure Mr. Twitty is aware, that some communities, basically African-American communities, pay about 15% more in property taxes on a yearly basis, with, you know, compared to their counterparts. So we just got to get the community more educated on some of the resources that are available for them. I'm big on outreach to all communities, to all business owners around Pinellas County. And again, you know, I'm very experienced in the assessment of properties throughout the county. I've been a property manager, a renovation manager, and also a maintenance manager for the last 6 years. I work for an investment group, which is in Pinellas County. I manage approximately 100 properties, which comes out to about $10 million in real estate assets. And we collect over $1.2 million a year when it comes to affordable housing. I'm on several affordable housing boards in the county, mainly in St. Petersburg. I'm on the Affordable Housing Lot Distribution Committee. I'm on the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, and I'm also on the Affordable Housing Policy Group. And with my experience in all those committees, I have the ability to change things, to advocate for certain changes that will be helpful throughout the county. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Let's stay with you, Trevor Mallory, for the next question. What do you see as the core function of this office? And additionally, what's the Value Adjustment Board's role in the process?
Could you repeat the last part, please?
Yeah, the Value Adjustment Board, what the role is in the whole process here.
Okay, I think what we really have to focus on is working hand in hand with the agencies that actually come up with the millage rate here, because there are some things that I understand are out of the property appraiser's hand. Of course, there is a workforce of my understanding 130 employees in that office that pretty much take on a lot of the weight, so it comes down to an administrative and a managerial effort here. So what I would like to see is I'm going to keep going back to the outreach, because most of the people that I speak to are not even aware of the duties or of a property appraiser. They weren't aware that it was even an elected position. So we just got to get the outreach on. We got to get to the community. We got to let everybody understand the efforts and policies that are put in place for them to utilize. And we got to stop allowing our citizens, mainly the senior group, to be pushed out of their communities that they've paid off their homes and they lived in for years, decades, some of them, and they just continue to lose their homes because just a simple fact, they're not educated on the things that are put in place for them to utilize.
Great, thank you. The question to you, Mr. Twitty, what do you see as the core function of the office, and what's the Value Adjustment Board's role in this process?
Right. Well, our statutory duties, we have to value every property in the county as of January 1 each year. And that equates to 435 parcels of real estate and an additional 15,000 parcels of taxable, tangible personal property. And in addition to that, we administer all the exemptions. So that's homestead, senior exemptions, veterans disability, surviving spouse exemptions. There's a myriad of different exemptions that we have to administer in the process. We handle all the parcel mapping for the county. So we maintain the GIS layer that serves as the tax parcel map. So that's a very important function as well. And then we have an administrative role. I spend a lot of time on outreach, probably I think more than any of my predecessors perhaps. And then we've also put a lot of those tools into our website. Our website is a great vehicle. It gets over 1.3 million users a year. So that is a great way for us to communicate with the public. And we engage with them constantly. I'm always out doing speaking engagements and trying to inform our citizens of tax law changes. But we're really not a policy-making body. We're an administrative body. And I think you also want me to address the role of the VAB. So the VAB is a third-party independent body that is administered by the clerk of the courts. And that is where if people don't feel like they get their fair shake on a valuation, and perhaps they've already met with us, because we always encourage them to meet with us even in advance of filing a petition, because nobody is absolutely 100% perfect all the time. And we're happy to talk to anybody at any time about value or exemptions. Then they can file a petition with the Value Adjustment Board, and the clerk administers that process, and it's an independent board that we have to present our evidence. They present theirs before an impartial magistrate, and he or she makes a ruling to the Value Adjustment Board, and then that may be upheld or overturned.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Staying with you, Mr. Twitty, what practices, and this may be a little redundant, but nevertheless, what practices are in place in your office right now that you think are important to carry over? And if there's things that you didn't do in your first 4 years that you'd want to introduce in your next term? Right.
Well, we've put a lot of great tools in. We built what I think is the best tax estimator in the entire state of Florida, if not one of the best in the country. Florida has probably the most complicated tax laws of any state, with the various exemptions and the way Save Our Homes cap and the 10% cap work and recapture. There's all types of things that are there to basically be some landmines to confuse the public. So we immediately, when I came into office, we started building what we thought would be the best tax estimator, because when new home buyers come in, they may be coming from out of state, or it's their first time buying. They don't understand they're going to get this cap reset. Assessed value returns to market value in the January 1 after your purchase. So when that occurs, unfortunately, a lot of our citizens were coming in, with tears in their eyes because they get a nasty escrow letter in early January when they crossed that January 1, and nobody told them that they were going to get this reset. And that might have been coming from some real estate professionals out there. Most of them are very good, but not everybody communicates in the same manner. I work with a lot of them closely, and they do a great job. So we wanted to make a tool that would make that process more transparent and easier. So that tool not only estimates your taxes for your first year of ownership after you cross that first January 1, and that also addresses any portability that you might qualify for in any homestead exemption.
Great, thank you. the question over to you, Mr. Mallory. What practices that you understand are going on currently in the office that you'd continue if you were elected, and what would you introduce that's different that's going on right now?
Well, first off, I know a lot of things in that office are just running as status quo. There is a procedure and a process here that the day-to-day operations, some of those things do not need to be bothered with, not even or adjusted. But again, another thing that's not being done is just education, man. All this stuff Mr. Twitty just spoke about. I've been a homeowner for 10 years, and I'm in the game of the real estate and, you know, dealing with properties and affordable housing and all this stuff. So I'm pretty well educated on my rights when it comes to my property taxes. It's just I'm gonna keep going back to this again. It's all education. Nobody knows what goes on in that office. So I'm running to have that change. It's very important that these homeowners are aware of all, and I mean all, available resources that they can use. Again, like you spoke about the adjustment board. I've been out here knocking doors and talking to people. It's a very small percentage of people that are even aware of an adjustment board. They don't even know that they can challenge their taxes. People get the letter in the mail and they say, this is your property taxes for this year, and they just roll with it. That's why now we're seeing articles and statistics worldwide that are showing that African Americans pay 15% more in property taxes than any other race. So those are some things that really need to be adjusted. I really would have to get in that office to understand all the things that have been put in play when it comes to the website, it comes to social media or whatever else is educating these people. But I know there's 130 employees there, and I'm pretty sure a great percentage of them do a very good job at what they're doing now. And I'm just understanding that I have managerial skills. I've managed 120 employees at one time. So I just want to get in there and work with everybody and fill them out and find out if there are any things that needs to be changed. If there are any land or property tax evaluations that need to be adjusted. I'm on some of these boards that right now currently that can possibly make some of these things happen.
Great, thank you very much. Next question, staying with you, Mr. Mallory. If you're elected, are there any reforms would you institute to enhance the technology of the office's processes? Now, I understand that you're not in there now. You may not know all what's going on there, but what would you bring in there? What would you offer the taxpayers here of the voters of Pinellas County if you're in terms of technology?
Right. I visit that site very frequently, and that's because, again, I'm in the business of assessing properties. So for me, it's not that difficult, but for someone that's not familiar with finding out or trying to maneuver their way through that process, it can be a little difficult. I mean, there is a lot of information on that website, but again, without the education or the knowledge to know what you're even looking for, it couldn't be a little overbearing. So I think it just needs to be simplified. It needs to be a department in that building where people can come in and sit down and maybe have, I don't want to say tutoring courses, but I think if you had a department in that office that educates citizens as they walk through that door, like one-on-one, hand in hand, not taking up too much time, because of course we all know time is money, and the employees in there are there to do a specific job. But we got to find a way to help maneuver citizens through the knowledge of property taxes, because again, it's not too many people are informed on the title itself. So with that being said, we just got to get with more citizens, more outreach, more one-on-one, more open door policies, more things in that office that could actually assist a citizen when they walk through that door to maneuver through that system.
Great, thank you. The question over to you, Mike Twitty. You're in there right now, but if you were reelected, what would you bring in terms of technology? Does the office need that right now?
Absolutely, technology is key. My first term I ran on valuation management and technology were the benchmarks of my expertise, and we've really gone full force on technology within the office. Whether it's enhancements internally, whether it's software development, we're in the process of developing a brand new website right now that will be feature rich. It will be the best in the state, if not the country. When it rolls out, it will have data elements and mapping capabilities in there that have never been seen in the property appraisal and assessment field to date. I was a professional appraiser for 27 years before coming into the office. I think Mr. Mallory and I's definition of assessing property is different. When he says that he assesses property, I think he's talking about whether he's making a purchase decision or a buy or sell. That's a little different than actually performing appraisals. I'm a state certified general appraiser, have been since the 90s, and also hold the MEI designation with the Appraisal Institute. So those are important distinctions that really allow me to most of the time I have to fly at 30,000 feet above my staff, and they do a great job. And if you ever walked into one of our offices, I think you'd be hard pressed to say you did not have an exceptional experience and that we held your hand through the process. If you read the comment cards that we receive, they are astronomical. Our public information team and customer service team, they treat the public so well. They find exemptions for them they didn't know that they were entitled to. Somebody at the tax collector's office, we have two people that are co-located with the tax collector's office, and they are, one of them just in the last week noticed a veteran shirt. He had a t-shirt on that said he was a veteran, was in line at the tax collector's office, and she approached him because she had a moment and just wanted to make sure that he was receiving all the benefits that a veteran of his stature should receive. So went above and beyond, and we get kudos like that for our team all the time.
Great, thank you very much. Staying with you, Mr. Twitty, how many property owners in the county have homestead exemptions right now?
About 60% of our homeowners carry homestead exemption.
All right, great. And Mr. Mallory, over to you. Is that? Do you understand that to be the case?
I can only take Mr. Twitty's word on that.
Yeah.
I've really had no reason to research the percentage of homestead exemptions right now in the county.
Sure, I get that. So stay with you, Trevor Mallory. Of all the issues confronting this office, which is the single issue that's most important to you, and why? And what would you do about it if you were elected?
Well, the most single issue right now to me is that African Americans are paying 13 to 15% more in property taxes. Now, the thing that I would like to do is to get with someone on the inside to figure out how do we adjust that. One, you don't want to promise people, which I definitely don't, that you're going to lower taxes for a race. You can't. I don't think that's sufficient, because I do understand that property taxes are a good portion of the Pinellas schools budget, also the county's budget, and the city's budget. So we got to find a way to make that adjustment without really affecting their budgets. And number two, you can't say that you're going to raise taxes. So there's just some things that need to be discussed on a high level of education on how do we make these adjustments to make sure that everybody gets a fair assessment across the board.
Great, thanks. And over to you, Mr. Twitty, same question. What, in your mind, is the biggest issue confronting your office, and how will you address that in the next 4 years if you're reelected?
Sure, I'd like to quickly respond to Trevor's assertion that people are being overassessed within our county, because we do a great job of making sure the level of assessment is balanced and fair and equitable for all of our citizens and homeowners. So we don't play favorites. The data doesn't play favorites, and we work really hard at making those fair and equitable. I think he may be referring to some national publications where some other jurisdictions in other states may have had some equity issues. And I don't disagree with that assertion in other jurisdictions, but I take issue with it in Pinellas County, since we pride ourselves in being fair and equitable. So, and I'm sorry, I jumped away.
Yeah, sure. So the biggest issue affecting your office right now, and what will you do about it if you're reelected?
Right. Well, we've got two issues, and they're both related to valuation impacts that could potentially affect our taxable value roll. One is impacts related to COVID-19, and we're tracking that very closely and working with our taxing authorities to give them heads up on where we're making some adjustments. Excuse me, because we have to kind of crystal ball some of this. Unfortunately, we don't know. Some of these commercial property shutdowns are going to be detrimental to certain industries. So those certain property types, we're trying to work with them, because if you are, say, a beach community with a lot of hotels that make up part of your tax roll, you could be more heavily impacted than an area that is mostly a bedroom community, because on the residential side of the equation, we're not seeing really residential impacts at this point. We're seeing a slowdown of sales activity volume, but price points have not, if anything, have only gone up.
Yeah.
So, and then we also have issues related to flood insurance rising premiums. So we've got obviously a lot of properties that are around the perimeter of the county, and over 50% of our taxable value is within the special flood hazard areas. So I'm chair of a committee with the Property Appraisers Association of Florida that I was responsible for forming with them, where it's called the Florida Flood Impact Committee. And we're monitoring all the activity with flood insurance at a national level with the National Flood Insurance Program that could affect our property owners.
Great, thank you very much. Staying with you, Mike Twitty. And actually, Trevor has mentioned this a bit in terms of his commentary, but can you name an issue in the county that directly impacts or is directly impacted by race and equity, and explain how your office can incorporate an equity framework in addressing the issue?
I mean, like I said, we don't discriminate in the way we handle our valuation. So there are probably areas within the county where it can be addressed. We do work with affordable housing from an exemption side, and there was a statutory change this year that will actually allow some additional properties to be pulled into the fold and receive some exemptions they weren't previously entitled to because of ownership structure. So that will help the equation for those property owners and those renters. But I can't point to any specific thing outside of our office.
Sure. Over to you, Trevor Mallory. Same question to you. Is there an issue in the county that directly impacts or is directly impacted by race and equity? And how, if you're elected, can your office incorporate an equity framework to deal with that?
Yes, and I have to say, back to the last question, I'm not going off of national publication. I'm going by experience. I said earlier, I have been a homeowner for 10 years in Pinellas County. So I know by experience when I say that African Americans pay a higher percentage in taxes. And number two, Mr. Twitty really has to admit that there is a problem in that category, and it does need to be adjusted, or it does definitely need to be up for discussion. I manage 100 properties, and they're all in those low-income neighborhoods and communities. So I work for an investment group that does not even live in the country. They're all out of country. They fund us. So we do have an issue with having issues with the property taxes on the properties that we do own and that we do have assessments on. And I do know how to assess a property, and it does not have to do with buying and selling. We go by we dig into all of our properties, then we definitely pay attention to taxes. In Chicago right now, the company I work for, we're selling 230 properties because of the same communities, the low-income communities, African American, the Hispanic communities, the property taxes just got out of hand and it got too high. And I'm seeing that same trend here in Pinellas County. I've seen it for the last 6 years in Chicago for the same company I work for now, and I'm starting to see, as that company, we're starting to see that same trend here in Pinellas County. So it definitely needs to be addressed, and it needs to be put up for discussion. And again, that's all from my experience. It's not from word of mouth, or it's not from any national articles. Thank you.
Thank you. Staying with you, Trevor Mallory, this is, of course, a partisan race, but should it be? I'm not asking you to change the law, but the fact is, as a, I actually live in Pinellas County, but I don't own property. But if I did, obviously you bring different, often both as candidates have a lot to offer in different ways, but does it matter that you're a Democrat and he's a Republican in this?
Absolutely not. Property taxes are Democratic, Republican, nonpartisan, independent. It affects everyone. It affects all humans, walk of life. So this is not, it has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican, but what it does have something to do with is just being fair across the board, fair assessments. It comes down to not all Democrats and not all Republicans are in the 1% of living. So everybody has to be assessed fair across the table. And it's just like Amendment 4. When Amendment 4 was on the ballot in 2018, that affected Democrats and Republicans. In this position, I think, is the same type of situation where you have to work with everybody because you're responsible for everybody in your county. You don't know their political party, so you just have to treat everyone fair across the board. So no, it does not matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican.
Same question to you, Mr. Twitty. Again, this is a partisan race. If it was up to you, would it be?
No, it does not need to be a partisan race. Like I said, our statutory duties are our duties, and we have to, uphold the state constitution and report to the Department of Revenue in the state of Florida. So we're unique from other constitutional officers because the county doesn't necessarily set our budget or formally approve our budget. It actually gets approved by the Department of Revenue. So, and that's designed for a reason, because they want to keep the setting of valuation separate from those that are setting millage rates within taxing authorities, so that both roles do not lie in the same hands. Because the equation for taxes, and I want to warn anybody that's watching, and is that you can't compare tax bills. So even if you have two properties next door to one another, you shouldn't be comparing the actual tax dollars, because you could have a long-time homeowner with Save Our Homes cap in place, and they literally could be paying a quarter of what the person next door is paying, depending on how long they've been in occupancy there at that property. So you really have to compare just market values and not look at taxable value or the actual tax dollars. And also, Mr. Mallory pointed out about the 15% higher again. In St. Petersburg, they have some of the highest millage rates in the county. So that is going to affect that equation. So, taxable value times millage rate equals tax bills. So when you bring that in, that if you compare that to, if you're buying a $100,000 house in the city of St. Pete, or you're buying one in unincorporated Pinellas County, you're going to have a difference when you compare tax bills. And that's because of the millage rate, not because of our valuations.
Right. Well, we've touched on a lot of important issues here. Before we end here, going with you, Mr. Twitty, is there a priority that we didn't discuss that you'd like to mention here before we leave today?
Yes, I would like to point out, another thing that we were really effective on a statewide level, since we're coming up to election season. If you recall, last time in 2018, we had Amendment 1 and Amendment 2 were property tax related things on the ballot. Amendment 1 was related to adding a third homestead exemption. Amendment 2 was related to extending the 10% non-homestead cap that was going to sunset. So we strongly advocated for Amendment 2 from our office. We were able to do that with our position because we thought it was very important for our business owners to not take that cap reset hit that had been in place. But then on Amendment 1, what we did is we built a transparency tool statewide, and we gained adoption from almost every county of the 67 counties in the state. First of its kind technology tool. You could plug in your address and see if you even qualified for that third homestead exemption, because it really wasn't necessarily an equitable new exemption, and we wanted to make sure people could actually test it with their own real estate and see. because on the surface it sounded really good. Oh yeah, I want an additional $25,000 off. But so many people did not qualify for it. So what we did is we said, we're not going to advocate, but we're going to build a tool that we're going to roll out statewide and allow the citizens to plug in their address and see. We wanted that voter transparency before they went to the ballot box.
Great, thank you very much. And to you, Trevor Mallory, what have we not got to yet that you want the voters of Pinellas County to know about your candidacy?
I think you did a great job, Mitch, in covering a lot of areas. And I think you can tell by my answers, one of my biggest concerns is the fair assessments across the board. But again, I'm a son of a Marine. My father was in the military. So I would just be willing and ready to advocate for anything that I could do to continue to help all the military families that move to our county. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And same with you, Trevor Mallory. Where can voters go to learn more about your campaign, your position on issues that are most important to them?
You can find my campaign at trevormallory.com. You can go there to find out anything you want to know. My platform has been laid out on there, and that's the best way to get in contact with me. I have a great team around me. We have great people working together with a lot of experience. So we're just ready to get this campaign on the roll and up and running. So again, trevormallory.com is where you can find out more about my campaign.
Thank you, Trevor. And to you, Mike Twitty, where can voters learn more about you and what you're hoping to do in the next 4 years?
Sure. Well, you can find me at miketwitty.com. So that's easy enough. My campaign team is getting the wheels moving again too. We're eager to get out there and communicate with our citizens and raise more awareness. Also, like to point out, and I'd like to thank Mr. Mallory for his father's service. My father was in the military as well and served in Vietnam, and so very proud of those fellows for doing their duty and representing us very well. But I want to let you know, Amendment 6 this year on the ballot is another property tax exemption that serves our surviving spouses of our disabled combat vets over 65. It's going to close a loophole that disallowed that exemption. It existed for other veterans, surviving spouses, but not for that particular category. So we've been working with the Appraisers Association at the state level, and we finally got that to the ballot as well. So proud that Amendment 5 and Amendment 6 will both be on the ballot to help our citizens statewide.
Well, on behalf of the Chamber's 1,400 members and board of directors, thanks for joining us today and your willingness to serve in an elective office. And that concludes our candidate interview.